David, you sound rather delicious today.
I know. I just got done with a 36 hours marathon on a hotline sex call-in tape. No,
Grandma's going to be very concerned about
I'm
your
coming out
new
of the
source
gate.
of income.
Coming out of the gate swinging, Grandma. Watch out. Look alive out there. No, I got a cold this week, but don't worry. I immediately hit it with an AD drip and some horse dewormer pills and knocked her right out. I was only sick for like a day.
Nice. It's a good thing we come from a family of horse people, so
Right.
we know just the right dosages.
Right. Well, I just threw a general smattering of it down my gullet and into my body.
You did that, the whole principle of like, if 2 will work, I might as well take 4, right?
So yeah, exactly.
Like if this works for a horse, surely it'll work for me.
When it says only take 2 pills and for the lasting effect, I took 8, and then I definitely didn't end up in the surgery center going, listen, I don't know when it's going down, but it will go down eventually. You're just going to have to show me a picture. You might straddling Madeleine Albright or something like that.
Oh, well, I'm glad that actual horse dewormer worked out for you. That way CNN won't lie about you like they lied about Joe.
I'd hate for them to cover me inappropriately like they did with him.
Yeah, I know, right? So I was watching, just spending too much time on the internet as it is. But, I saw I haven't listened to the Rogan episode yet. I don't know if you have, but the one where he sat down with Sanjay Gupta this week.
I have not quite worked down the Rolodex to that particular episode yet.
Okay. Well, if anybody doesn't know who Sanjay is, he's like the chief medical analyst at CNN. And as you can imagine, that type of guy and that type of job, he's COVID narrative all the way. But I do want to preface, he gets credit for at least having the conversation. Never mind the fact that he was a weasel before, during, and after the conversation, about the conversation, but he at least went on to a show of people that generally don't agree with him.
But that was
some stuff.
That was the compliment of the shit sandwich we're making right now. And to show how truly out of their depth they are over there, he thought he was going to walk in and have a casual conversation with Joe Rogan and that he wouldn't be pressed on any issues.
That was very
it was
clear.
Evident. He hadn't even, it was like he had never listened to a Joe Rogan
He said that
podcast.
He did to get ready for it,
Right.
and I think that's a lie.
I think he just walked in. He's like, I could stone cold this guy all day.
Yeah, there's no way. And again, I'm not surprised by that attitude because that's exactly how they think about anybody who doesn't,
Well, that's what an echo chamber does.
Echo the party line.
It weakens your argument to a point where it can't even stand up to any questioning of it, which is why they won't allow you to question anything anymore.
Yeah. So, but one particular point in the episode, and there were a couple of videos, like I said, I've seen, I haven't listened to the episode in total, but one about the whole, where Joe's like, hey, let me show you a picture of this guy or a video of this guy who, blows a vape exhale so you can see the smoke out from behind a mask to just show you all the places that it's leaking from. And we're not going to get into the validity or not of that video, but the point is that Gupta just like uncomfortably laughed it off, saying, I've been doing COVID stuff day in and day out for 2 years, and you guys still seem to find stuff that I haven't seen. And that was a rather like he said the quiet part out loud of what you were just talking about with the echo chamber. It's like, yeah, we know you don't expose yourself to anything that isn't with the prevailing narrative, but you just kind of admitted it to an audience of how many does Joe have? 200 million people?
Something like that. He gets like 3 million per episode, so if not more.
Way off.
I mean, I'm sure more listen to it, but he's got like 3 million subscribers.
Yeah,
but that's not the point. The
point is, Gupta admitting that there's just stuff he's never seen.
And for all the people who are like, guys, come on, this doesn't mean that much. He just did interview, and one side said that they won, and then they went back to the one side and said that they won. There's no story here. Well, the reality is, there is a real point here, is that it's not. And he confronted them, basically point out, said, "Why do you feel comfortable working for a place that flippantly lied and misrepresented everything about me.
Yes, this was the second part of the episode that was rather telling.
This is the point, is that he danced around the topic and would never actually come out and say that his news organization lied, but he all but did say it. And for the people who are like, oh, big whoop, so they got one story. It's that if they are willing to lie about something as small as a comedian with a podcast, getting a cold or getting COVID and getting better from it, if they are willing to lie about something that's small and catty, are you telling me that they will willingly cover the larger issues unbiased and unfettered?
Yeah, which was the final question, because this went on for about 5 minutes, but the final real dagger that he absolutely refused to answer from Joe was exactly what David said. Is like, if they're going to lie about a comedian taking horse dewormer, what are they telling us about Russia? What are they telling us about, in any big major topic that is a little more important than whether Joe takes, the horse version of ivermectin or whether it was prescribed to him. It was the human dosage prescribed to him by a doctor.
Whether or not it's okay to say it's from China or not. Whether or not Fauci had emails or didn't. Like, come on, guys. Let's...
And, this is one of those episodes where you have to watch the video too, because the demeanor and the body language is rather interesting from Gupta. So throughout that exchange, where before he gets to the major point, Joe says, why would CNN lie about this? Like, they have to know that's right. Does it bother you as the chief medical guy on CNN? And Gupta was very apologetic, might be too extreme, but he was like, he backed down. He was like, yeah, I don't know why they said that. They shouldn't have said that, because Joe held up the little doctor prescribed package of the human pills that he took. And Gupta's like, yeah, they shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have done that. Fast forward, it couldn't have been more than 2 days, 24 to 48 hours. Gupta is now on CNN. He's now on Friendly Turf with Don Lemon. And Don Lemon basically leads him by the nose to say, well, we didn't really lie about that. I mean, ivermectin is used in horses. But I mean, if you have an IQ above room temperature, you can clearly see what somebody's after when they know that there are both human and animal uses for a certain drug. And then they overtly only run in their headlines, Joe Rogan takes horse dewormer or medication intended for horses. And that with their audience that exists in that echo chamber, that they're not getting the total picture. And that was the most telling thing about this, is Gupta to Joe's face is apologetic and conciliatory. And when he's not sitting in front of Joe, he's right back on the party line.
And again, it lets their peepees hanging out of their pants a little bit on this one, because it's so obvious that they're coming after him because they're losing credibility. They're losing audience. Their audience decreased when Mr. Trump was exiled from the office of presidency. They lost almost 50% of their viewership.
Yeah.
And
which is why they're still
talking which is why they're still pushing fear, which is why they're still pushing agendas, which is why they're still trying to keep you engaged, because they don't know what to do anymore. They're not reporting the news anymore. That's gone. And this is and if it hasn't been before now, this is the final nail in that coffin, that you're not getting the news. You're getting what they want you to hear so that you come back. That's it.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's the thing about why this Joe thing is a bigger thing than it is. And it's not just people who happen to listen to Joe are going to agree with him, and people who happen to watch CNN and Gupta are going to agree with him. We get it. We've talked about the whole tribalistic aspect of humanity, and we understand that that's how the human brain works for a lot of people. But the point is, for the people that are like Joe says, I'm a comedian and I have a podcast and we talk about crazy stuff from time to time.
Don't listen to me. I'm a fucking idiot. He says it all the time.
Yeah. But yet Joe, it wasn't really a debate, it was a conversation, but when he's put across the table from somebody who is supposed to be his better in every way on this topic, he's a doctor, so he's entitled to an opinion. Joe's not. He studies it every day, 24/7. Joe doesn't. He's on a respected, fair and balanced news source, CNN. Joe's just some guy talking into a mic. Like, if you put the fight card up for these two, somebody's going to tell you left, right, and center that Gupta is the authority on everything. And yet, Joe, with just simple everyman questions, like, does it bother you that they lied about me? Does it bother you that you haven't seen some of these very obvious things on the internet that maybe question your narrative? And Gupta was an intellectual lightweight in that respect. I'm not saying he is personally, but I'm saying in that, he could not come up with anything that wasn't a prefabricated opinion. And when that didn't fit the question that Joe asked, he was total deer in the headlights. He just laughed awkwardly and dodged the question and everything else. And again, if that juxtaposition doesn't put the nail in your own personal critical thinking coffin of saying, all right, whatever the mainstream sources are doing, they're not doing it for my benefit. And so I'm just going to turn them off.
Might be a good idea at this point. You can get better news from horse worm pushing, meathead loving, Second Amendment dickhead Joe Rogan.
Yeah.
Than he can from CNN. I think that scares him. But have we set the record for the longest intro banter?
I think so. This is more like an episode within an episode because David wasn't very funny on this.
I wasn't very funny at all.
I think it's probably because
I think that sex phone marathon really took it out of me, guys. I apologize. I won't do that next time.
Oh, you mean it wasn't the horse dewormer?
No, the horse dewormer gave me a boost.
All right. Well, with that being said, let's get into the actual episode. Welcome to Weapons of Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 65, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com/65. You can also find us on YouTube, basically any podcast app you can possibly think of. And you can also link up with us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. So we hope you enjoyed that extra little show you got on Friday of last week. We are back on our regularly scheduled program of one episode a week every Monday, assuming we don't have any more catastrophic tech issues.
Unless one of our flights gets canceled and then we can't make it.
Yeah. You're saying we probably shouldn't fly Southwest in the immediate future?
I think we should talk to the higher ups at this podcast and make sure that there's no Vaxx mandates handed down.
That is true. That is true. The higher ups they're rough around here.
Dicks around here.
So, and actually when we thought about the intro topic, I just thought it was going to be a standalone thing that didn't tie in with the theme of this episode, but it really does. So it's
all connected, Dane. Don't you see? Can't you get it?
In the second month of October,
year of our Lord,
2021.
God save the Queen.
A current event that's going on this week has been all over the major headlines is the record 4.3 million jobless claims. 4.3 million. I think the pre-pandemic record was something like 3.6 million. So this is a substantial jump. And it just so happens to come in the second week of October 2021. Now, some people might say, okay, so what? They're going to have all kinds of rationalizations for it or whatever. But one potential explanation, and again, I'm not even saying that there's one explanation for this. I'm saying it is a mixture of things.
Could be.
Which one is the bigger impetus and which one is the lesser? I'm not going to get into that. I'm just going to say that there is another potential plausible explanation that is conveniently missing from every headline. Can you imagine what that would be? What would push 4.3 million people out of work but not be discussed? Can you think of anything, David?
Well, there might have been a sale at Macy's.
I think I did see a New York Times article about that.
Or perhaps there was the dropping of the new Bond film, but that couldn't. Maybe they're rushing out to see movies again at AMC because I saw our stock went up a little bit. Maybe that's what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, they are joining the ape army.
The ape army. But I don't know. It didn't sound like I got it right. Do you want to just tell me this guessing game? I didn't even get multiple choice.
I would think.
I'm not good at essays.
I would think. I'm going to put myself in the shoes of an editor at a major paper like New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post,
The failing New York Times.
Yes. So I'm the editor there. And I'm thinking, well, for the last couple weeks, we've been running doom and gloom headlines about all of the healthcare workers that have voluntarily left the workforce because of vaccine mandates. And that's terrible. And I think in, New York, they had to call in the National Guard to serve as like nurses and stuff because they were so short-staffed in some of the hospitals. We ran a bunch of headlines about that. And then very recently, we had this massive Southwest airline pilot strike, essentially, which the company says, this ain't organized by us. The pilots did this on their own. And all of the headlines are, Southwest Airlines employees quit because of, what were their two explanations? Bad weather? Or no, at first they said Southwest canceled a bunch of flights because of bad weather and air traffic control problems.
Yeah, so for the last 100 years that we've been doing this, it's always been blue skies and tailwinds. Yeah. Is that what it is?
That created thousands and thousands of cancellations. Yeah, that was it. So anyway, when that wasn't flying anymore, they're saying that, well, the Southwest pilots are upset about X, Y, or Z. Nothing, not the Vaxx mandate. That has nothing to do with it. And again, this is a company policy, not a government one. But we've been running, again, I'm back in the editor's shoes. We've been running articles like this for 2 weeks. And now we see 4.3 million people. 3% of the entire American workforce has left the workforce, despite many, many job openings. And we can't possibly have anything to say about maybe some vaccine mandates, both on the company level, state level, federal level, are starting to get put into place. And people are like, F this, I'm out.
And not to mention the fact that this is coming while we're being led by the group that was supposed to bring jobs back, right? They were so proud
build back better.
under Obama that they created so many jobs. Yeah. And then they're going to build back better after Trump destroyed this entire country pretty much. And to have 4.3, did I get that number right? 4.3 million people go unemployed in one day. That doesn't look very good on your resume.
Not one day. It's just they do the monthly report where they track how many people are going to be out of the workforce, and they have their estimates. And this came in way over the estimates for the month of October.
Okay, but can we just call it the one day, because there's probably that one day that they canceled the 100 flights alone. It feels like there was there was a dateline that was set, and then all of a sudden,
right? But I don't think that particular event makes it into the data, because again, they're collecting data over the period of a month, and the Southwest thing pretty much happened within the same week as when they found out 4.3 million people were no longer in the workforce.
And by the way, but when they were running, the two leaders, the Biden and the Cackler. Didn't they say that they weren't going to make any mandates, that they weren't going to have any vaccine passports, they weren't going to do this, that, the other? Wasn't that part of their platform? They said that
in the very beginning. Yeah, they said you can't do that.
And then they said they wouldn't take the Trump vaccine too.
Of course. Well, that's where it started.
Well, that's where it started. And then they said they won't, push it, and we won't.
But yet, if the other side says, I don't want to take the Biden vaccine, well, those are just stupid backward roots who aren't listening to the science.
Uneducated, hillbilly, redneck pieces of shit.
I mean, I
don't get medical care too, by the way, because they won't get the vaccine.
If you're a regular listener, I can sense your frustration, even though you're not even currently listening to this at the time we're recording it.
I can feel it now.
I can prospectively feel your frustration, because you're like, guys, listen, we listen to you every week. You guys are the funniest, most good-looking, smartest.
Good-looking, because they could see the video already,
people in the history of always. So we listen to every episode. We get it. We understand that's what you're saying. But you're also a little bit frustrated because you're like, guys, come on. you point out these very obvious contradictions all the time. Like, we get it. There's bias, there's tribalism, there's like, we get it. You guys do this all the time. This is obvious. Well, to you, dear listener, this stuff might be obvious, because I dare say you're not listening to a podcast like this if you are stuck in an echo chamber and just want to be there forever. You at least have some sort of internal desire to go out and truth seek for yourself. Ask follow-up questions, that kind of thing. So what seems obvious to you is not obvious to a lot of people. They'll read the New York Times and say, well, New York Times didn't mention anything about people leaving the workforce over vaccine mandates. Must have nothing to do with it. And that's the way a lot of people view the world. It's a sad, realization to come to.
If I didn't hear it, it's news to me.
Like the Gupta thing.
Yeah.
How do you guys find this stuff? I study it 24/7 for 2 years. How do you find it? It's the internet, bro. Like Joe said.
Phones.
Like Joe's like, it's the internet, man. It's a podcast. Are you surprised by this?
Like, where have you been? Oh, that's right. You've been in that echo chamber for 2 years, studying all the science that changes day by day. Yeah. Got it.
And which, we're about halfway through the episode before you get the meme introduced to you. But the meme that is kind of underlying this thing is, and we've talked about it in different little contexts on past episodes, but that nothing is ever the government's fault. If something happens, it's not because of a government policy. It's not because, of corruption. It's not because of any of the number of things that people are willing to point at other governments and be like, well, Venezuela failed because of corruption, that kind of thing. But never about your own government. It's never government's fault, and it must be the fault of, and I'm going to put all of these in air quotes because the way they use these terms are ridiculous. It's the market's fault, or it's freedom's fault. Remember Schwarzenegger's "Screw your freedom." It's people being left to make their own life decisions. That's why we have chaos. Not because of anything government
This
did.
world would be a lot better if you just did everything I told you to do all the time, you fucking idiot.
Exactly. And that's the way a not insubstantial portion of the country views the world.
Well, that sounds a little fun, doesn't it? To just be told what to do. Have they ever implemented this anywhere in the world that we could study? Or, I mean, did they do it in Venezuela? You just mentioned that. Perchance to dream. Did you just mention a place that they tried that once, and did it work out? It worked out, didn't it?
Yeah, it did not. Actually, I know this comes as a shock to you.
How?
Total surprise.
How did that? But they had control. The government had control over everything. How could it go wrong?
Now, the apologists for regimes such as that will say, "Well, that wasn't real socialism," or whatever reason.
Where's the real one? I'm sorry. Where's the real one? Was it Stalin? Was it Mao? Is it Xi now? Is it any of the communist parties that you've seen? Well, they just haven't done it right yet. You got to do it right.
Yeah. And I mean, that whole, they haven't done it right, and that's why our plans aren't working, as opposed to, well, boys, I think we ought to go back to the drawing board because the plan's not working, so maybe we should adjust the plan.
Oh, by the way.
It's never
that's
adjust
all
the
it is,
plan.
right? That's all it is in Venezuela. It's just a drawing board. Like, all right, guys, gather around. There's definitely not panic in the streets and violence and people running for their lives and starving to death. That's definitely not it. It's just a chalkboard. They're like, all right, we'll get it right this time. Let's erase it all. Start back to one. Everybody go home to get a nice rest up, because tomorrow we're gonna get this started again. All right, we're gonna get it right this time.
Yeah, it's never actually that. It's always
horrible.
The people need to change more.
Horrible things. Change usually comes in horrible measures.
And here's the thing. David mentioned Stalin and Mao, and yes, some regimes are worse than others.
Missed it by that much.
There might be some differences between each, but the point we're trying to make is whether it goes that far in terms of command and control, tell everybody what to do, or to a lesser extent in Western European nations, United States, Canada, yada, yada, yada. Although I would argue places like Canada, Australia,
they're taking a dark turn.
It's trending in not the right direction. But the point is, all governments, whether they're as far out there as Mao and Stalin, or whether they're as near and dear to your heart as the federal regime in the United States, the point is, they are all on this spectrum of, we need to control people to have positive outcomes for society. And if they don't listen to us, then we need to get more aggressive. And again, you've heard this from both experts on, the mainstream media sources and from like celebrities and stuff like that. Like what we brought up about the whole Stephen Colbert thing and Jimmy Kimmel laughing about people not getting health care because they aren't vaxxed and basically joking about, we should probably just force them anyway. But that's the right moral thing to do.
Here's the thing too, is that they're laughing about people dying from not getting vaccinated, but they want you to be vaccinated because they want to save lives. It's like, wait a second. You're laughing at death because it's not the way that you wanted it to be, so you're laughing at it. But if it is the way that you don't want it to be, it's sad, and we should protect everybody that we can. Yeah. So I'm sorry. When did death become different? Like what you died from makes you a good person or a bad person. Death is always death. Death is always tragic. Death is always the end. So which part of that death, where they kept saying every life lost is a tragedy. Yeah. Except unless you didn't do what I told you to. Now
unless you died of this certain thing.
Unless you didn't do what I told you to, then haha, you fucking loser.
Yeah.
Enjoy your death with death sauce. Yeah. Doesn't sound very morally fibric, does it?
No.
Fibrous?
It definitely doesn't sound morally consistent. It sounds very, very subjective, if you ask me. But and again, talked about this several times before, the state has control of people basically from 5 years old all the way up through college if they go that far. And I mean by state indoctrination. 95% plus of American citizens go through the public education system. So do you think that the government schools are going to teach the kids from 5 years all the way up that they did something wrong? That it's not just the people being free, and that if it wasn't for the wise overlords, kids would still be working in mines. You'd probably be getting paid 2 cents an hour. Everything you eat would be just laced with arsenic if it wasn't for us. Like, of course, that's what they're going to teach the kids. And so it's not surprising that people have that certain outlook of the world, like, oh, well, government must do more, and that's how we fix it. But to David's point about, these different regimes don't, they don't seem to change their ways one way or another. It reminds me of a C.S. Lewis quote, and it goes like this, quote, "Of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims may be the most oppressive. It would be better to live under robber barons than under omnipotent moral busybodies. The robber baron's cruelty may sometimes sleep. His cupidity may at some point be satiated. But those who torment us for our own good will torment us without end, for they do so with the approval of their own conscience." That quote, hits the nail on the head. The reason why the government's plan never changes is because there's no need to change, because they're on the side of moral righteousness and goodness. And if the plan is failing, it's because of evil people that aren't following the rules. They sincerely believe that they're doing it for the best interests of humanity. And again, not talking about specifically getting the vaccine or not, but talking about everything around their COVID narrative, from mandatory masks to lockdowns to closing down hospitals to elective procedures, which sent cancer cancer diagnoses through the roof. None of those things are the result of their policy. It's because evil, stupid people weren't following what they had to say. And so a tyranny that's imposed truly for the good of its own victims, as long as those in power sincerely believe about their moral goodness, they're never going to change the plan. Why would they? They're on the side of light, and the people who aren't listening are on the side of darkness.
Well, I would never want to see you in a filibuster, because I don't know how you continued that so long. I had to go put out a fire in the other room and came back from the smoldering embers.
I cover for you. The listeners have no idea you were gone for the last 15 minutes.
And I threw it all away.
And you come in and just out us both.
But I know boring Uncle Dane was saying a bunch of things, but cool Uncle David's back, and let me point you back on the right track, because I agree with everything that he said, and I couldn't have said it better myself.
Oh my God! Wait till he hears what
David's fat and ugly.
About.
You know, the reason we haven't added video components to this is because he's so hideous. I'm scared to put him on the internet.
You know, if I would have been thinking on my toes,
you would have just totally fucked me on that.
No,
one.
I would have.
Sorry, I'm dropping a lot.
I would have had a discussion with you where I, attributed some really terrible motive to you and say, David, what do you got to say about that?
Oh, that was your one opportunity.
Dead silence.
Your one opportunity. It's gone.
I'm just not a clever guy. That's just why I'm not on my toes like that.
It's okay. You got to seize these opportunities when you get them, though, because they don't come around very often.
So. Anyway. We'll do kind of a lightning round. We won't get, into the weeds of what some of these articles claim. We'll link some on the show notes page and you can read more for yourself. They're not hard to find. But some of the excuses that are put forward instead of people rebelling against the vaccine mandate are toxic work culture.
Oh, God.
The employees of America, without talking to each other, right, apparently just all woke up one morning and decided, you know what? I think where I work is toxic. Me too. That's a good point. Yeah, let's all leave the workforce at the same time.
Anymore. They're not even creative. They use the same word over and over again. Like it started with, from what I remember, it's a toxic male masculinity is the one that stuck out to me the most. And now there's a toxic transphobia at Netflix because of Dave Chappelle's stand-up. And now it's a toxic work environment.
And that's what made people leave in droves. Now, again,
like, come on, man. Like, can't you guys go you can run the world, but you can't buy a thesaurus? Toxic, venomous, rotten, like anything that implies bad, a rotten work environment.
You're telling them to be more creative with their word choice?
Can you make an effort? Like, just work down a couple of them.
See, that's what I personally love about David, and I think it's what you love about David too. He always sees the bright side and humorous side in it. Like, if you're gonna feed us bullshit, give us different words every now and then.
Don't feed me the same bologna sandwich you fed me last night, Mom. Feed me the same bologna sandwich and put a fucking tomato on it. That's what I'm asking for.
He cares nothing else for the argument. Just damn it, be more entertaining.
I do with the hard hitting notes, all right? None of this fodder that Dane wants.
So I mean, yes. Can some people leave their job because of toxic work culture? Is that an answer for some of the 4.3 million people? Of course it is. No doubt about it. Again, this is a holistic picture with a whole lot of inputs. The vaccine mandate happens to be one of them. What's another one? I saw one article. God, I wish I would have saved this specific link to put on the show notes. I'll try to track it down. Blamed it on climate change. Now, hear me out. The reason why so many people left their, especially high-tech jobs, he wanted to call out like the Silicon Valley people.
I'm listening.
that their corporate goals and objectives aren't sufficiently in favor of stopping existential climate change. And that's why people are leaving. Now, again, are there some people out there that just, for them, that is far and away their number one issue and they would willingly, leave their job over? Of course there are. You really think 4.3 million people are walking out of their jobs because they don't think their company is sufficiently woke on climate change?
Those rainy days that are happening more often nowadays are going to suck even more when you can't eat, when you can't buy heat, when you can't, exist anymore. Anyway, just food for thought. So how does walking out of your job change the climate?
Well,
because it'll force them to write new laws.
No, it'll force the companies themselves to start being more climate conscious.
I'm conscious of climate change. I'm conscious of it. Every day I'm peeking out that window. There it is. There's that climate. I'm watching you. Oh my God.
People are going to clip that up and they're going to be like, Dane and David thinks the climate is just when it's warm during the day and cooler at night.
Keep one eye on that climate. At all times.
That's exactly what they would write about us.
Oh, God.
But
If we were big enough to care, listen, one of these days we're going to be 140 in Australia, let me tell you what. And then, buddy, you're in trouble. Coming for you, Sanjay.
Now, and the last one in this not so lightning, this is more of a thunder round than a lightning round, is just the general, nondescript, abstract headline of, well, within the workforce broadly, there's just perceptions of more options than there were before. And they have high confidence that even if they leave this job that they left for, again, toxic culture or climate change, not vaccine mandates, but they have confidence that when they leave that job, they can find another one pretty quickly.
And what gives them that confidence?
Yeah. That gets into what we might think about.
The college education that they got, that they paid. Let me look at my watch. Just this side of half a Finsky, half a 100K.
Yeah,
if you're lucky, if that's a middle range.
Yeah, that they're 150K in debt for a PhD in underwater basket weaving. They think, you know what? I've been told that I have a college degree and I am highly employable. So employ me at X rate.
And then the
I demand
person
it.
interviewing you says, that's fine. I am told that you are not going to be working here. Have a nice day. Because you can tell them to be blue in the face. I am so qualified for this job, even though none of my credentials say so.
So, and that's the thing. Again, the picture's holistic. These might be some factors, but here's the thing. Did any of those factors happen to exist before the last month? I dare say we're told all the time how toxic work cultures are, how much climate change needs to impact, corporate policy, how much, we're told that all the time. But yet now it's just where it was just, kind of a talking point off to the side. Now it's like the focal point explanation for why people aren't working. It has nothing to do with the fact that some people might find it at least slightly objectionable to have something forced into their body that they don't want for whatever reason.
And that same side, didn't they just get done with the Me Too movement?
Yeah.
Speaking of things being forced into your body without your consent, they were really adamant about that particular jab, but this jab, man, they just don't care. They are just a couple of Crosbys making you a wonderful shake, rattle and roll.
That was good.
Make sure you suck back on that cocktail I made you. Puns.
I like that. Now, okay.
Because the vaccine can be a cocktail.
Crosby's.
I can't write all the jokes for you.
Now they're going to be like, all right, Dane and David, we get that their explanations are kind of ridiculous, but, it wasn't like vaccine mandates just started on Tuesday. Your explanation has been around for a while. True. Our explanation has been around for, I don't know, the past 6 to 8 months. When did vaccine mandates first start? Like April, right? May?
Ooh, I don't know.
Like on at some level. I'm not saying broadly speaking. I'm not saying the Biden administration. They've been saying that they will.
They said like a couple of months after the vaccine is rolled out, certain restaurants wouldn't let you attend if you weren't vaccinated.
Okay, or let me put it this way. The headlines started rolling out about mandates were possibly a good way to go. Right. And then shortly thereafter, localities, local governments, companies, things like that started instituting vaccine mandates. So there has been a buildup. But the point is that their explanations have been around for years. They've been talking about them. Our explanation has been around about 6 to 8 months. And we think maybe our explanation, it can contribute at least as much as their excuses. So the timing is everything. It just so happened, like tons of people that when we were in the height of the pandemic or going into the worst season last October of 2020, again, pre-vaccine, people were like, we got to lock down, we got to do this, we got to do that. But the vaccine mandate wasn't on the table and tons of people weren't out of work when they were getting more in unemployment benefits and other incentives from the government to stay out of work. So again, can a vaccine mandate contributing to the 4.3 million be a plausible thing that someone might want to write an article about? I think that's rather reasonable.
It's fair.
It's fair game for
Now,
discussion.
let's wait with bated breath. In fact, not even bated. Let's just hold our breath. Let's hold our breath until they come out and say that.
Yeah.
Next time on Weapons of Meme Destruction, 2 dead people sit in front of mics.
Yeah.
So, Dane.
Yeah.
Where could they find this episode?
They can find this episode at wmdpodcast.com/65. They can find it on YouTube, and they can find it on any podcast app you can possibly think of, as well as link up with us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. With that being said, David, we have a special event to go to tonight.
Oh, we do.
We're stoked about it.
Sure, boy.
Half of us are stoked about it, and I basically, COVID jabbed David into going.
What's that? You Weinstein me into going?
I made him an offer he couldn't refuse.
Oh, yeah. Well,
so
do you want to stop bearing the lead?
Yeah,
Okay.
today is the day of the live recording of Tom Woods episode 2000. You've heard us mention Tom before on the podcast. I'm a regular listener. David, not so much.
I still like the guy.
David, listen.
There's only so many hours I can listen to podcasts in a week.
That's true. And when Joe is pumping out 3 hours at a time, which I know David likes to listen
Guy's
to.
a goddamn machine.
That cuts into the weekly listening time. But yes, Tom Woods episode 2000. He's a great guy, smart guy. Looking forward to meeting him. But almost more important than any of that for your humble host here is he is a successful podcast host who has tons of resources to help little guys like us get started, whether that be by example or shout outs or whatever the case may be. And that's just a cool thing to do for somebody above you to say, yeah, here, I'll give you a hand up kind of thing. Pretty good guy. So we're going to go check that out and hang out with a bunch of libertarian degenerates.
Yeah.
As fans like us, we're not near as gracious as he are. We're scumbags. So we're going to go hang out with a few thousand fellow scumbags.
There you go. And while we're off doing that, you guys stay safe and make sure you keep one eye on that climate. And we'll see you next week.
At all times.